Hi everyone, this is Owen from Primal RC, and today I will be showing you how to replace the shock seals on our V3 shocks. Some people have had leaking issues, so hopefully this video will help you fix that. On our latest Gravedigger, some people have noticed that this top screw on the shock reservoirs is leaking. If this is the case when you unbox your truck, you notice there's oil in the bag for the shocks. This screw should be the first thing you check before you do anything else. What you should do is first unscrew it, and then you're going to want to clean off all of the oil here. So just grab a paper towel, clean all of that off, and then clean off the shock too. Get all of the oil off the shock as best you can. Then you can add a little bit of blue thread lock to this screw. And then there's also an O-ring on here. Make sure you keep that. And then with everything cleaned off and that thread lock, screw this back in. Hopefully the thread lock will help seal this bolt a little bit. And then you want to tighten this, not too much, but definitely a little bit more than normal. And then just clean off any excess. And hopefully that will prevent any leaks coming from this screw. These are the seals we'll be installing today. They go in the bottom of the shock here. So this process will be exactly the same if you have a shock reservoir kit on top here. And our first step is going to be removing the springs. So there we go. Now we have our shock. Next up, you'll want to unscrew this cap and then drain the oil into a container. Sometimes the oil is still pretty new, so you can reuse it. And when you drain the oil, you want to make sure the shock is fully extended like this. If it's compressed, it'll be a little bit harder to get the oil out. The easiest way I've found to unscrew the top is to put a screwdriver up here and then use that leverage to break it loose, and then slowly begin to unscrew this. So off camera, I drained the oil, and you can see this oil is still basically new and pretty clean, so you could reuse this if you want. This is the stock oil, which is 100 CST. And then here you can see the piston and everything. I just cleaned all of this up. So now we're ready to take the piston out. So this is a 2.5 millimeter hex. And then you're gonna want to hold something on the other end here. So I like to use just a little hex. And then that gives you enough leverage to twist the end out. Now we can get the piston out. This is sometimes a little tricky because the tolerances are pretty tight. There we go. Now make sure you save this washer on the bottom of the piston. And then there is also a washer stuck to the screw here. Since we have the shock apart, another upgrade that some people like to do is drill out these piston holes to be larger and then use a thicker oil, and that will essentially have the same feel to the shock as the stock shock, but the thicker oil, it will be a little bit smoother and hopefully prevent leaks. So the next step to removing these seals is to take the shock shaft out. There we go. And now we need to unscrew this hex. So a little tip is the wheel nut wrench will actually work on this hex. It's a 24 millimeter. We just simply loosen it and then take this off. Now we have the little nylon spacer. Take that out. And here you can see the first seal. To remove these seals, I like to use a small Allen wrench. You don't want to use anything too sharp because you could damage them. And if you're not reusing them, obviously you can use whatever you want to get these out. The second seal is inside of here in this little groove. It's a little bit tricky to get out. There we go. And here it is. Before the new seals go in, you just want to clean any oil out from inside of here. I like to use a little bit of degreaser on a paper towel and just put the entire paper towel in here and spin it around. And then also do the same on the bottom. So now we can press the new seals into place, and you can see the seals actually are a little bit of a V shape and they're directional. We want to make sure that when the shock is vertical like this, that both of the seals are sitting in there with the V's facing up. So essentially it's like this, and you want to make sure that both of them are stacked in that way. Sometimes you have to kind of fold the seal in half to get it into this inner groove, and you kind of just press it in. And then I like to use the little Allen wrench again to just get it into place, and then you kind of work it around. There, now it's fully in, and then we can do the outer one. Once again, make sure the V is in the correct orientation. And something you can also do to prevent leaks here is to add a little bit of lithium grease to the seals before you put them in. And this will help lubricate them on the shaft, and it will also help prevent leaks. Now we add back our nylon spacer. Make sure you also get the orientation right here. When you put it down on the shock, it should sit flush, and then you screw on the end cap. Now don't fully tighten this yet. We want to put the shock shaft in before we fully tighten it. There we go. And now we can tighten it all the way. And then use your wheel nut wrench again. And this can just be basically hand tight. You don't have to go crazy. And you want to just check that the shock shaft can move freely. It might get a little bit stuck, and that's because we haven't put the piston in yet. So now we can throw the piston in, add here, and then the piston, and then the top screw. You can also add a little bit of thread lock to this screw, because if it comes out, that's going to be a bad day. And now one more time, you just want to check everything is moving freely. Seems good. So now we're ready to add oil in. So you don't want to fill your shock all the way up with oil, and then you want to slowly push it down until we get to the very bottom of the stroke. And you should see the piston just barely come to the top there. And I need to add a little bit more oil here, and then I can screw the top back on. So our shock is full of oil. I got the piston at the top, and then I can just screw the top cap back on. And then sometimes you get a little bit of oil that leaks out, so we just wipe it all off. And now our piston is all done. And then our last step is to obviously add the springs back. And then the end collar. And there we go. So this has been a quick video on how to replace the seals in your V3 shock. If you have any leaking shock issues or questions about this install, you can send us an email at sales@primalrc, or you can use the contact page on our website.